Welcome back, MTN Giants podcast, reacting to another pretty embarrassing, not pretty, it was an embarrassing Giants loss, 35-14 to the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, the Giants were expected to lose the game. We were wondering basically, can they cover the 16.5 point spread? They did not. It was 35-14. I had it as 30-10 myself, so I was really close in terms of point differential. I was 1 point off, but yeah, this game pretty much went exactly as I expected it to. The Ravens at times looked like they were playing with their food. It wasn't really that much of a challenge for them. There were times the Giants defense completely broke down. I remember that Justice Hill touchdown late in the game where he had the entire right side of the field to himself. There was a blown coverage for what feels like the third game in a row. The more you watch this team, it's just pretty evident that whatever the coaches are telling them or trying to teach them, it's just not resonating, and I feel like the message is not getting through anymore. You know, just even like a month ago, I was definitely for keeping Brian Daboll. I was definitely more for firing Joe Schoen. I still feel that way. I think if anyone deserves more blame, it is Joe Schoen because this is his roster, and I feel like Brian Daboll is given pretty much nothing to work with. But with that being said, I have not been too impressed with Brian Daboll either in recent weeks. I feel like there's really nothing I'm looking at saying like, oh, Daboll, good job there. Oh, that was smart. Or it's just mostly bad things. There's a lot of mental errors. The Giants, of course, in the Thanksgiving game and the week after that versus the Saints had 10 plus penalties in back-to-back games. So I'm sitting here like, why am I going to praise the coach? You know, I know it's Tim Boyle, I know it's Tommy DeVito, I know it's Drew Lock, and there's even Daniel Jones. There's not much to work with, but at the same time, like, this team has regressed every single year from 2022. You're supposed to see progression, and it's the opposite. So it's just disappointing that that's the outcome we're getting here. And these games now are not even close. I saw a tweet before from Walt on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, WBG84. Since Joe Schoen's "we're not far off" or "we're not that far off" comment during the bye-week presser, the Giants have been outscored 106-52, and they're obviously 0-4 during that time. So you're thinking, like, I know the injuries are bad, and I still don't think they're tanking. I really don't, because I just think their seats are too much on fire to actually be tanking. I do not buy into that. So they're trying to win. You saw Brian Daboll going ballistic on the sideline. But what I'm getting to is these games are not even close. You can't sit here and say we're not that far off when every game is very far off. It's just, you cannot have that. So we still have like 4 games to go, or 3 games now, and I don't want to sit here and do the whole like, will they be fired, will they not thing, but I just don't see how they're back. I don't know how you finish a season 2-15, which seems to be the outcome here. Right now, they're 10-point dogs at Atlanta next week. I mean, maybe they find a way to beat the Colts, maybe, but I'm not confident about that. The Colts had a very rough second half today. They looked worse than the Giants in their second half, but still, I think the Giants finish out this year 2-15. We'll see what the Raiders do tomorrow in terms of draft order. I don't expect them to win that game versus the Falcons, but maybe. But this is about as bad as it can get, and the week started off, for the second game in a row, it started off with a guy flying over a plane with a message for John Mara, and this time the message said, "Mr. Mara, enough. We won't stop until you fire everyone." So last week it was, what was the message last week? It was like, we've had enough of this dumpster fire or something. Now it's like a demand, like, we will not stop until you fire everyone. So who's ever doing the whole flag flyover thing, it's definitely appreciated by Giants Nation. And I think I saw a news article that it was not the same guy. So apparently the first guy did it, and then somebody saw that idea and said, oh, that's a great freaking idea. I'm going to do that too. So apparently somebody new paid for this plane with a message on it. So it's like, we might be seeing this a lot more often if things don't change. There's only one more home game, so like maybe it's only just a one more time type of thing. Maybe it'll happen during practices now. I don't know. Like, they might continue to do this whole plane flying over MetLife thing, which I think is hilarious. So anyway, yeah, I want to talk about the game first before we get into all the other stuff, but please leave a like, subscribe, and let's get into it. The game started off with a 59-yard kick return by Justice Hill, so the game's like 10 seconds in and the Ravens are pretty much already in business. But luckily the Giants had a fumble from Lamar Jackson inside their own 20. It was stripped by Adoree Jackson and recovered by Adoree Jackson. That was a great play by him. Adoree actually had some good moments in this game. I figured, of all people, a guy who's a veteran, probably around 29 years old now, you figured he'd be the one to kind of mail it in, but I saw him like making some plays, especially in the first half. Maybe that was not the case in the second half, but I was still impressed. On the Giants' first offensive drive after the fumble, DeVito had a 3rd and 2. He threw a slant to Tyrone Tracy way over his head. It was a very easy conversion, but did not make a simple throw. The Ravens punted on a 4th and 1 near midfield, which I think really shows you how much the Ravens did not respect the Giants offense. Like, if they had any respect for the Giants offense at all, they're probably going for that, but they're thinking we can just beat these guys by playing the field position game, and that's what they did, and it worked. So the Giants started at the 12-yard line, on their own 12-yard line, on their first 2 possessions. Eventually they punted. Desmond King had that really good punt return. The special teams could not tackle the first quarter. It was really bad. It got better, but like still, those special teams was horrible. Kickoff returns, punt returns, they were not good at all. Brian Burns had a sack on a 2nd and goal. He hit Ronnie Stanley with like a swim move, and he got the sack, so that was a great play. But right after that, Mark Andrews scored from 13 yards out on a 3rd and goal. Isaiah Simmons turned his head, and Lamar Jackson just threw a strike right up the seam. Great throw. I saw it was the record for the most receiving touchdowns in Ravens history, so shout out to Mark Andrews for doing that. It's kind of like surprising, but I guess the Ravens, at least in my lifetime, have not had that many like amazing wide receivers. Like, I'm thinking like Torrey Smith had his moments, Anquan Bolden probably wasn't there long enough. Dennis Pitta had his moments, but like nobody was that great with the Ravens at wide receiver. So yeah, I guess this all makes sense. There was the play where Wan'Dale Robinson caught that 3rd down slant and got blasted. I forget who hit him, but he got blasted, held onto the ball, so that was a great catch. And then on the 4th down and 1, they tried to go for a quarterback sneak on Baltimore's 30. It came up short, turnover on downs. We saw Brian Daboll screaming on the sidelines, pointing up. I don't know what he was pointing at because he was clearly short. I don't know if he was mad at the refs or if anything, be mad at the dumb play call. Like, I think anybody could have seen that coming. They later went for a 4th down. It was a creative play. They got it to Wan'Dale. We'll go over that. But, like, you know, it's like a quarterback sneak with a small frame Tommy DeVito. This is not Jalen Hurts, who's, like, squatting 500 pounds. Like, this is Tommy DeVito. There was the Rashad Bateman first touchdown he had, 49 yards on a play action. It was actually a pretty unique play call, the way it was designed. So he got behind the defense. Jason Pinnock, he thought he was going over. Pinnock got turned around, and he just kept going straight, and Bateman had just a wide open touchdown, his first of 2. Neighbors had a very nice toe drag catch for 14 yards on the left side. That was still DeVito playing at that time. This is not Boyle yet, but Boyle does come in at some point. There was a 3rd and 2 inside handoff to Tyrone Tracy. It made it a 4th and 2, and this is the play I was talking about just a minute ago. They went for it on 4th and down. I mean, like, you know, I said 4th and down. They went for it on 4th down. They were 2 and 11. You're down already. Like, why the hell not go for it? So I get it. And they did like a design rollout to the left for DeVito, and they got Wan'Dale Robinson open in the flat, and he picked up the 1st down. Like, it was executed very nicely. So that's probably what you should have done the first time. And this was that possession where the Ravens had so many penalties. I remember this now. So DeVito got sacked on the next play by Kyle Van Noy, made it a 2nd and 17. Justin Matabuke had a roughing the passer, and it should have been 3rd and 17. The Giants got a 1st down. Then there was the Brandon Stevens pass interference on Malik Neighbors in the left corner, right by the first pylon. Then DeVito gets sacked on back-to-back plays, but Baltimore had hands to the face. It was Odafe Owe on Illuminor. The Giants had a 1st and goal. Devin Singletary has a 3-yard touchdown. So, like, it took 3 penalties basically for the Giants to score on that drive, but you'll take what you can get. Rashad Bateman had his 2nd touchdown with 32 seconds left in the 2nd quarter. It was a perfect throw by Lamar Jackson, 20-yard throw. Dane Belton had a very rough day in coverage. He messed up on Mark Andrews a couple times. He messed up here on this touchdown. So Belton, who had to step up with Tyler Nubin out, did not have himself the best game. He had a couple nice plays, but Belton definitely is not someone I'm looking at as like a future starter. It was pretty disappointing. So Tim Boyle came out for the final possession in the first half, and it was to take a knee, so it wasn't like a whole possession. So that made us think like, okay, what's wrong with DeVito? And we found out that coming out of halftime, Tim Boyle was taking warm-ups, and it was going to be him, and DeVito had a concussion. And I'm trying to think like when it happened. They were showing a couple examples of maybe when it happened, but I feel like if DeVito had a concussion, it happened like pretty early, so I don't know why he was still in there, but maybe he was symptomatic all of a sudden and they took him out. So Tim Boyle plays. He had a 1st down hole shot to Malik Neighbors. It was actually a great throw. Like, it was just placed perfectly. Like, so Neighbors had to go to the ground. He did not take a big hit from the safety. Like, I don't know if Tim Boyle planned to throw it in that spot or maybe it was luck, but it was a great throw. Neighbors later on this drive rolled his ankle tackle because Chris Manhertz got into it with Roquan Smith in a little shoving battle. Chris Manhertz stepped on Neighbors' ankle. It looked bad at first, but he came back in the game, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but you're thinking like, oh my God, this is only the Giants who would have one of their own players step on their first-round receiver's ankle and get him injured, but he was fine, luckily. There was a 3rd down and 1 play for the Giants defense. They missed a tackle on Derrick Henry. I think that was Brian Burns who missed that tackle. Henry picked up an extra 6 yards, got the 1st down, and Brian Burns got kind of shaken up on that play, but he came back in the game. I feel like that's been the theme of the year for Neighbors and Brian Burns. Like from like week 6 onwards, it feels like those guys have been so banged up, and they do get hurt every so often. They come out for a bit, but they always come back in. So I give those guys credit for having, like, I guess the toughness and the grit to keep fighting back and playing through these injuries throughout a terrible season. There was the underthrow by Lamar Jackson. It should have been intercepted. It was a deep ball to Bateman. And if that ball was thrown in stride, it's 28-7 Ravens, but Dane Belton had a shot at the interception, did not come up with it. But later, Devontae Walker, the rookie out of North Carolina, a prospect I liked. I don't know if he made sense for the Giants. He's not really their type, but for the Ravens, it made sense. He had a touchdown in the back of the end zone. It might have been Greg Stroman Jr. or it might have been Pinnock. I forget whose fault it was. I think it was Stroman who kind of got his eyes caught in the backfield for a bit, and Walker leaked out behind him. So, like, it happens, I guess, for a guy like Stroman. There was a nice play to Wan'Dale Robinson for 25 yards down the right sideline. Daniel Bellinger had a play action, like an over route for 18 yards. The Giants had a 4th and 3 on Baltimore's 21, or they were down 21. It was on Baltimore's 22-yard line. They had another pass interference from Brandon Stevens on a back shoulder throw to Neighbors. I thought it was kind of a shitty penalty call because I don't think the ball was catchable, but, you know, the game was out of hand by that point, so at that point it's like whatever. Right after that, they went for a fade to Malik Neighbors on the bottom of the screen, and it looked like he had it for a second. He would have been out of bounds anyway, so it didn't really matter, but Nate Wiggins, the rookie out of Clemson for the Ravens, he made a great play on that ball. So Neighbors, like, it was a pretty good ball placement. It wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but just a good play on defense there. So 4th and goal from the 3 falls incomplete for the Giants. It honestly should have been intercepted by either Marlon Humphrey or Ardarius Washington, but luckily for Tim Boyle, it was not intercepted. The Ravens had that drive. I mean, this is the ensuing drive where they were basically backed up in their own end zone, and Lamar on a 2nd down made a great corner throw to Zay Flowers for a gain of 16. Lamar Jackson was so good as a passer in this game. So good. He had 5 passing touchdowns. I think that tied his career high. He was like 22 of 25. It's right in front of me. 21 of 25 passing, 290 passing yards. It's pretty crazy how great of a passing day he had. There was a 3rd and 10, like a mini screen play to Justice Hill. He picked up a 1st down. I say mini screen because it was like one offensive lineman who kind of left to go block for him, but it worked out anyway. So they hit Justice Hill in the flat, picked up the 1st down. This was the same drive where Justice Hill had the 27-yard walk-in touchdown. It was busted coverage. They sent McFadden on a blitz, and it felt like everybody else was playing like cover 0 man. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe there was some type of like miscommunication, but no way that guy should be that open. In the 4th quarter for the Giants offense, they had a deep shot to Wan'Dale Robinson. It looked like it was somewhat catchable, but it fell incomplete. It was pretty good defense, but I think there was a chance there to make that catch. We know Wan'Dale Robinson, that's not his game, making deep catches, contested catches, but still, there was a shot. He could have caught it. They ran a Tyrone Tracy direct snap on 4th and 1. It converted, so that was nice. Like, that's another one where, like, why? DeVito was out of the game by this point, but it just goes back to my point earlier. Like, there are so many more, I guess, creative ways you can go for a 4th and 1. Even like a direct snap to Tyrone Tracy. I will take that over a Tommy DeVito quarterback sneak. There was a Malik Neighbors touchdown. It was the first Giants passing touchdown since, I believe, November 3rd versus the Commanders. I mean, it's mid-December, so a month and a half since the Giants had a passing touchdown. I think that was still Daniel Jones, too, who's been off the team now for like 3 weeks. So that was good to see. It was garbage time to the maximum. I want to see when this happened. It was 6:41 to go in the 4th quarter. They were down 35-7, but Neighbors had a 23-yard touchdown. The ball almost hit the ground, but it was pretty good placement by Tim Boyle. Good adjustment by Neighbors. He caught it. Giants had a touchdown. All was good and well. The Ravens basically ran out the clock with this Rasheen Ali guy I've never heard of. I mean, Keaton Mitchell was out this game, so they had like this practice squad running back. He looked pretty good, actually. Josh Johnson came in. He was a Giant for a bit, so we saw some, one of the OG quarterbacks of the league right there. And for Tim Boyle, I don't think he looked that bad. He was 12 of 24, 123 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. I felt like maybe, he got screwed on a couple plays where receivers dropped the ball and whatnot, but I felt like the ball placement was not bad for Tim Boyle. Like, he's not the answer. I know some wackos might say that. They'll be like, oh, let's draft Travis Hunter and we'll make Tim Boyle the stopgap quarterback. Like, no, let's not do that. So I don't want anyone thinking like Tim Boyle's the answer, but there were times where it's like, oh, that was a good throw. I talked about that whole shot to Neighbors. It was like such a perfect placement. He did have the interception where he basically just threw it up in double coverage to Neighbors. It was picked off by our Darius Washington, so like, okay. But overall, for being on the roster for like 2 or 3 weeks, I feel like Boyle has been, like, it wasn't that bad of a performance, so I'll take it. For the Giants rushing attack, it was not great. Singletary and Tyrone Tracy each had 3.1 yards per carry. Singletary had the touchdown this week. If you started Tyrone Tracy in fantasy this week, I'm sorry, not a good performance for playoff weekend. Of course, Neighbors, he balled out with his 14 targets, 10 catches, 82 yards, had the touchdown. Nobody else really did much. Wan'Dale Robinson had 4 catches for 38 yards and that 25-yard catch. Bellinger had a couple nice catches. Slayton had 1 for 16, but nothing else was that impressive. So the Giants receiving game was basically all Neighbors and like one or two nice plays from Wan'Dale and Bellinger. For the Giants defense, as I said with Lamar, he was just perfect today. 21 of 25 and 5 touchdowns, no turn. Oh, he had a fumble, but yeah, no interceptions, only sacked twice. So he played great. This is what you expect. And it's still funny how I forgot to bring this up in my preview for this game, but the one NFC team that Lamar has lost to is the Giants and Daniel Jones back in that 2022 season. I still don't know how that happened. I don't get it, but it's like funny seeing that stat every time they bring up like Lamar beating an NFC team. It's like, oh, he's like 30-1 versus NFC teams, and like 1 loss was to the Giants. It's just crazy how that happened. So Lamar was great. The Giants secondary was bad. No surprise. Lamar on the ground was 6 carries for 65 yards. Derrick Henry was not great. He had some decent chunk runs, like maybe like 10 yards, 12 yards, 13 yards, but nothing like, not a big run that he usually has. 14 carries for 67 yards. I mentioned this Rasheen Ali guy had 8 carries for 32 yards. He had some nice looking runs at some points, but no like massive long runs for Baltimore. Lamar had a 21-yard run. That was the longest one. But aside from that, like the longest running back run was 13 yards from Derrick Henry. So that, they kept him in check for the most part there. They couldn't cover Rashad Bateman deep. We saw that a couple times. Justice Hill in the flat, they had a tough time with him on screen passes and whatnot. Mark Andrews only had 2 catches for 24. He had the touchdown, of course, but it looked like early that Mark Andrews was going to have a big day. He caught the touchdown. He later caught like a corner route for like 12 yards on Dane Belton once again. So you're thinking like, all right, this might be a massive Mark Andrews game, but it really wasn't. Zay Flowers, 6 catches for 53 yards. Like, that's just an average Zay Flowers game, so nothing great. Devontae Walker had his 21-yard touchdown. Aguilar had a 26-yard catch late in this game. It's funny, when Walker caught that touchdown, I thought he was Isaiah Likely, and I saw his number was 81, which I think Likely's number 80. So at first I was like, who the hell is that guy? But I was like, oh, Devontae Walker, look at that. I feel like the Giants defense didn't really have any standouts. I saw Dane Belton was credited with 15 total tackles. McFadden had 11 total. And each of those guys, Belton and McFadden, each had a sack, so that was good to see. But you had like Greg Stroman, Art Green, Jason Pinnock. Pinnock had a couple rough moments in this game. Just guys that like should not be playing for you full time, that were playing for this team full time. And you look up and down this roster, it's like, I don't even know who these guys are. Like, it's just crazy the position they're in right now. And I know I'm pointing out the obvious here, but it's pretty unwatchable football. Like, if you do something else with your Sundays now, I get it. I completely understand. I still like to watch them for some reason. Like, I just want to see, how bad does this get? Can they keep losing? Can they get the first overall pick? I mentioned right now that they are 10-point dogs to the Falcons. The Falcons play tomorrow, so I really hope they stay healthy, no big injuries. I feel like even if Cousins got hurt, like, I still feel like Penix would beat the crap out of them, which would be kind of funny because the Giants passed on Penix, so that might be like a little bit of a revenge spot, or like, oh, you guys passed on me, I'll show you type of thing. I wish there was a spread for this Colts game. I don't know what it would be. I'm trying to think like to myself what it would be. I feel like maybe it'd be Colts by like 3.5. Like, it might be similar to that Saints one. Actually, the Saints ended up as 5.5-point favorites. The Colts are very hit and miss. Like, they looked so good the first quarter and a half of that Broncos game today. Their defense was great. They were picking off. I think they picked off Bo Nix like 2 or 3 times. So, yeah, they look great at some points, but the Colts are very inconsistent. As you know, Anthony Richardson has plays where he looks like he could be the best quarterback of all time, and then he makes plays where it's like, does this guy belong in the NFL? So it's tough to really gauge where they're at. And of course, Jonathan Taylor dropped that touchdown at the 1-yard line, which I don't know why that's happened so many times this year. We saw a Bengals defender do it today. We saw Malachi Corley on the Jets do it, like on that Thursday night game a while back. We saw Taylor do it today for the Colts. It's like, I don't know why it's happening so much. It's so embarrassing to drop the ball at the 1-yard line. Like, you did all the hard work, you got open, you executed a play. Just hold on to the ball for like 2 extra steps. It just bothers me so much when guys do that. And then they're going to be at the Eagles for the final week of the season. The Eagles have been very, very good lately. They've won a bunch of games in a row. They have not lost since week number 6. So the Eagles are just on fire right now. They're playing for that 1 seed. I saw the Lions lost today to the Bills, and I think they have the same record now. I think they're both 12-2. So like, they're right there neck and neck. The Eagles may have to play for the for the number 1 seed, which is massive these days because that's the only seed that gets a bye. It used to be the first 2 seeds. So the Eagles have something to play for now. So I really do think if the Colts take care of business, that the Giants will finish 2-15. I just don't see how it goes any other way. And unfortunately, based on how things went today, the Giants' strength of schedule went up by a good amount, and the Raiders basically stayed the same. The Giants right now are at .549. The Raiders are at .536. So if the Raiders lose tomorrow, they will still be the first overall pick. But as I said to you guys last time, I think that might have been last week's reaction, I still think there's a chance the Raiders lose another game. I think it is possible. Looking at their schedule, they are 5.5-point dogs tomorrow against the Falcons at home. But they are favored right now. They're favored for next week versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville looked good today. They did play the Jets, and we know the Jets are terrible. But as I said, I do think there's a shot that the Raiders can win one of these next 2 out of 3 games. I don't think they're going to win tomorrow. I don't see the Falcons blowing that. It's possible. The Falcons have looked awful lately. But I do think they can beat Jacksonville, and I do think they can beat the Saints. I do think those 2 are possible. The Chargers, they play the final week. If the Chargers have something to play for, I don't see how they beat them. But there's a chance the Raiders can at least win one more. I can see it happening. It's probably not this week, but the week after, and then the week after that, I think there's a chance. And as I said, in terms of Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen, the job security, it's really tough to see them keeping their jobs. The Giants, of course, have no wins at home this year. Unless they beat the Colts, it's going to stay that way. Talk about, like, happy 100th season, guys. Let's not win a game at home this year. Like, it's actually crazy that happened. I saw the stat on the TV today. I know Bobby Skinner reposted this, but the Giants in the first half point differential at home, the Giants are second worst all time right now. And the Giants, of course, have one more home game, one more first half of a home game where they can make this even worse. So the Giants have a chance to be up there with the 2008 Lions and the 2007 Dolphins. I think the Lions went winless that year, right? I'm pretty sure that was their winless year. So they have a chance to be up there with some really embarrassing company, not where you want to be. So if they lose by more than 6 points in the first half against the Colts, they will have the worst home first half point differential in NFL history. So the Giants at MetLife, they do not do too well, as we know. Between the Plains and the bad football and the GM and head coach very much on the hot seat, I just don't know how it gets much worse. I don't know. I've seen people say, is this worse than 2021? It probably is, because at least if this happened last year, they had such a great quarterback class last year. This year, nobody really knows if Shador or Cam Ward are going to be that great. So it's like, maybe this is worse than 2021. I don't know. It's a very bad situation to be in. But there are only 3 games left. We'll find out soon after. Do Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen retain their jobs? I think the thing that would really piss me off the most is they fire Daboll and keep Schoen. At that point, either keep both or just fire both. I do not want a scenario where one stays, and it's never going to be keep the head coach and fire the GM. It does not work that way usually. So as I said before, if I had to fire one of them, I'm going to fire Joe Schoen. I think he's done a worse job, but it's always the head coach going first. So I do think the most realistic outcome is both are fired, but you never know. Like, I cannot tell with John Mara. So I don't know. John Mara came out and said like a month and a half ago that Brian Dable and Joe Schoen would be safe after this year. And now it's like, oh, you probably shouldn't have said that. So anyway, yeah, that'll do it. I think I pretty much said all I had to for this game. There just was not much great to talk about. Right now, it's first overall pick. That'll probably change tomorrow night. And I just hope that the Raiders win one of these next 2 games after this, and the Giants can be the only team with 2 wins. So that'll do it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.